Welcome to Anything But 9 to 5, and in this episode we're going to be speaking to Scotty Allen of Strangeparts on YouTube. Scotty's going to be talking to us about his origin story and how he came up with the idea of Strangeparts, his nomad lifestyle, and much, much more. Take it away. So Scotty, for listeners that might not know about you, can you give us a kind of explanation of who you are and what it is you do?
Sure. Yeah. My name is Scotty Allen, and I run a YouTube channel called Strangeparts. I'm an American, but I've been a nomadic American for the past 5 years or so. Over the past couple years, I've spent a whole bunch of time in China, and that's kind of what led me to starting Strangeparts was going to China and falling in love with the manufacturing ecosystem over there and wanting to share that with the rest of the world.
Yeah, I mean, some of the videos I've kind of seen, it is just incredible what's out there, and you kind of, as a consumer, you don't really kind of think about where the stuff comes from, how it's kind of created, and how it's put together. So, yeah, it's fascinating. And
we have I think even when we do think about factories, we have sort of a very stylized notion of what a factory is actually like, and so it's really opened my eyes going and seeing it all in person.
Mm-hmm. You just have picture conveyor belts with robotic arms.
Exactly. And I have yet to go to a factory that has conveyor belts and robotic arms. They're out there, but it's not the majority of them.
So you didn't always do Strangeparts, as a kind of YouTube channel. Did you work a regular job? And if you did work a regular job, what made you give that up to do the Strangeparts and live the kind of nomadic lifestyle you're talking about?
Yeah. So that's a great question. Yeah, I haven't had a real job in over 8 years now, I think. But yeah, I got my start. Well, I've had kind of a weird transition from school life into working life. I got my start in the industry actually in '99 during the dot-com boom, after 2 years of college, or 2 years of university, as you guys would say. And I got hired on as an intern at an artificial intelligence startup just right around the corner from Wall Street, New York. And it was just one of those opportunities where there was too much to do and not enough people to do it. And so I, not really knowing very much, was thrown into the deep end. Here's a stack of books, here's a to-do list, and here are all the root passwords to the servers. Go. And so it was a fantastic opportunity to learn a whole bunch in a short amount of time. And I went from there to at like 19 running a $10 million data center in Midtown New York for a office rental company. Kind of it was for a company that eventually got rolled up into Regis, sort of a WeWork. And that was, again, an incredible opportunity. I was way underqualified, but there was nobody else to do it. So, and then I became disenfranchised with sort of office life and being by the time I left, I was 21 and I had no idea how to spend money. And I was making way more than a 21-year-old should make. And so I'd swirled away what I thought was a huge sum of money at the time, which was probably maybe $10,000 US. And I thought, I'm going to go travel the world. And so I set off to travel as long as I could on that little pool of money. And I ended up traveling for 16 months. I traveled through Fiji and Australia and Southeast Asia, and really kind of fell in love with Asia and fell in love with this notion of traveling and exploring, and fell in love with the notion of not having to be at an office 5 days a week. But I also sort of realized that I had a real love for programming. It was something that I had done a little bit in my system and network administration job before I'd left New York. And I was finding that I was, every time I got to a major city, I would hole up in an internet cafe for a week and write Perl code, which was what I was writing at the time. And I thought, this is, there's something to this. I think maybe I have found my calling, and I should go back to school and get a proper computer science degree. And so when I came back to the US, completely broke, I applied and got a computer science degree in Boulder, Colorado, at the University of Colorado, and went and did 3 more years and got my degree, and then and I took to that like a fish to water, and so I when I finished the degree, I applied for a job at Google. It was the only place that I applied for, and I was lucky enough to make it through their hiring process, and ended up as a software engineer working on web search at Google for a couple of years. And that led me through, I left there after 2 years and worked at a couple startups in the Valley. But I kept working down to smaller and smaller companies, and I kept disliking living in or working in offices and working in open plan offices. And by the end of it, I said, you know what, I really just need to start my own company and be out on my own. And one of the things that I promised myself was that I would never work in an office again. And that stayed true for the past 8 years. I designed a small, thanks. Yeah, I designed a small software company that was all remote. And so, it was one of the core tenets was that we would never have an office. And to this day, we still don't. So, and then I kind of wound down my involvement in that, in 2015. And was looking for my next adventure, and that led me to China and Strangeparts. I thought I was going to start an electronics company, and I accidentally started a YouTube channel instead.
It's funny how these things happen, eh?
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
So it was going to kind of China and kind of seeing that kind of stuff that made you come up with the idea of Strangeparts, yeah? For
sure. Yeah. I had originally gone to sort of learn more about the manufacturing ecosystem, to learn more about electronics. And I'd heard about Shenzhen and the Shenzhen electronics markets as this place where you could buy anything that you wanted. And that, it sounded like a pretty great place to come up with ideas. I had grown up as a kid into electronics as a hobby, and I was always, begging my mom to take me to the local Radio Shack, which was the only place in town that was selling, electronics parts. And this just sounded like the world's largest Radio Shack. And so when I saw it for the first time, I immediately fell in love and spent a whole bunch more time just exploring and learning. And I'd fallen in with a group of open source hardware hackers and guys that were over there doing manufacturing. And so, we'd get together for dinner and beer each night. And I was just, just at dinner, I'd be taking a page or two of notes, just learning about, they'd be complaining about their day at the factory and all the things that had gone wrong. And I was getting a master's education in manufacturing techniques along the way. So, the more I got excited about that, the more I realized, there's just so much amazing stuff here. I wish I could share it with friends back home. And that's what led to starting to do video. And then simultaneously, I guess I sort of realized how different manufacturing was from what was being told in sort of mainstream media. There's shows like How It's Made, that I and a bunch of the other people that I, met in China, a bunch of the other Westerners that were there to do manufacturing, simultaneously we watched a lot of them and simultaneously really hated them because they never told the real story. They never got into enough depth for our taste. And so that's what led to going down the road of trying to do it better myself.
I mean, it is quite funny when you kind of talk about the manufacturing thing. You think conveyor belts, you think the arms and stuff like that. But one of the things I love when you go into your videos and you go into these factories, you see human beings with such skill. That for me is absolutely fascinating as well, because some of them are doing the exact same task, probably more than 8 hours a day.
Yeah,
they're doing it is really impressive.
Yeah, for sure.
Comes across. I love the way you kind of show that in the videos. That kind of level of skill that they've got.
Yeah, I think there is a lot of skill, not the cost of cheap labor. It's cost of labor in at least in Shenzhen is rising dramatically. Every factory I owner complains that they can't hire cheap enough workers anymore. That they all want too much money.
Almost a first world problem, that.
Right? Yeah. I mean, I think it's great. It's great for Chinese workers. There are fewer workers than demand. So. So it's driving wages up. Yeah.
Well, as we're kind of going into what going into that, you've obviously mentioned you fell in love with it. I mean, when I'm watching your videos, what comes across straight away is your kind of passion for the tech and your personal projects, and you really see it. You can see how emotionally invested you are in those, especially. And you've got it's almost like a kind of childlike wonder that you have when you're looking at the manufacturing and the factory tours, But one of the things I started to look forward to myself was when I was watching these weird and wonderful places I'd never heard of before, that you're visiting. Would you say the kind of travel and exploration of these places is kind of one of the kind of unexpected kind of passions that you've kind of discovered while doing Strangeparts, or has it just always been something that's been there for you to kind of go out and find these places?
Yeah, I mean, I think that passion was already there, from my much earlier experiences, just being a poor backpacker traveling around Southeast Asia. The travel and exploration aspect has always been kind of a part of what makes me passionate about the world in general. I would say it's what makes me passionate about technology too, is just that aspect of exploring a new world, whether it's, out in the physical world or whether it's inside a computer or inside a circuit board. But I think it is a real key piece of what makes Strangeparts. When I pitch Strangeparts, one of the ways that I describe it is that it's the intersection of travel, adventure, and technology. And that's, not every video is going to hit on each of those three things in the same amount. But it's part of what I look for in, does something fit on Strangeparts?
Yeah, you can definitely tell that straight away when you're watching the videos. When you're doing these kind of projects, especially, I notice how enthusiastic they are as well. Have you always had that kind of effect on people?
I mean, certainly not universally. And I think, I don't know, it's surprising to hear that because I don't always feel like I get that in person when I'm shooting a video. Maybe it's just the way we edit it, in that we tend to, if people are reluctant, or, I mean, I have a lot of people who don't want to be on camera, who don't, who aren't particularly interested in helping me. But they sort of don't end up in the video because nothing very interesting happens. So we just tend to cut that out. I mean, that being said, I guess, particularly in China, I think people are very eager to form relationships. I mean, business there really is all about relationships. And in particular, there is a fair amount of white privilege. I think that there's a Chinese notion of that, people really want to engage with Westerners. They really want to do business with Westerners. And there's even sort of this weird, foreigners are fashionable to hang out with. So they sort of confer status if you hang out with a foreigner, which can be super weird at times. But I think that sort of all lends to a high degree of openness and eagerness to sort of engage with foreigners. China by and large is very homogenous. Well, it's simultaneously homogenous and not homogenous. I mean, Shenzhen in particular is a huge melting pot of people from all over, but it's mostly people from all over China. And even in Shenzhen, which is probably one of the more sort of cosmopolitan cities, foreigners are still kind of rare. It depends on where you are in the city and what you're doing. But it's totally common for people to want to come up to you and just take a selfie with you just because you're white and for no other reason, just because you're obviously a foreigner. And so, yeah, I think that sort of exoticness, opens a lot of doors.
And what height are you, Scotty?
I'm 6'1", so 6'1". So
do you stand out? Is that stereotype there where you'd be quite towering above quite a lot of people? Or I'm a head above pretty much everybody else, which is great. I can always see where I'm going, and but I do stand out. And a lot of people, and I'm blonde haired and blue eyed, and I've often got a big, huge camera, and I'm walking down the street talking to myself, so I tend to draw a lot of attention. Yeah, every once in a while I do see kind of the sideward glance that when people are passing you by. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. It's often part of the reason that is because I'll often record the same thing in the same place multiple times. And
Right.
I can get really neurotic, particularly if it's like an intro. I'll record up to 30 or 40 times. And so those same people have been watching me for the past half hour. And so I tend to draw a crowd, which can be a real problem.
The crazy Westerner walks pacing back and forth with his camera.
Yeah, exactly. So,
Oh, geez.
and logging is not really a thing in China. So it's,
Mhm.
they're just really curious as to what is going on. What is this crazy Westerner doing?
Do you use drone shots for some of the overheads that you do when you're,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
and that's all fine in the city centre and stuff like that, yeah.
Yeah. Obviously, so DJI, I have a DJI drone, as
Mhm.
do most people who fly drones these days, and they're actually based in Shenzhen. So their app has pretty good, descriptions on where you can and can't fly. I do run into problems occasionally with like the Baoan. They're not full policemen, and they will sometimes either be enforcing rules their boss set or rules they made up themselves. And so I occasionally get shooed off by them, and it can be real hit or
Mhm.
miss as to where you're going to get shooed off from.
Sure
And then
your
there are a couple
charm
of
wins through.
areas. What's that?
I'm sure your charm wins through every time.
Sometimes they can just be jerks, and they just tell you have to land and go somewhere else. And so I just
Yeah.
generally go around the corner and then do whatever I was doing. But it's not too bad. They're mostly just worried that you're going to hit somebody. So,
Ah, right, got you. When you're kind of doing these videos as well, one of the things I definitely see is how, especially projects, see how emotionally invested you get in a project.
yeah,
Particularly your latest video that you did with the ATM slot machine, but I'll refer back to that, later on. But one of the things that definitely comes across is it sometimes must be an absolute struggle, when things
yeah,
aren't going right. How do you keep motivated and stay enthusiastic and, you know, keep going with
yeah.
kind of what feels like so many roadblocks and adversities?
Yeah, I mean, I think it is a real challenge, for me. I think it comes across sometimes that I'm more enthusiastic on camera than I feel. Um, I, I think the thing that keeps me going, it's interesting. A lot of people are like, oh, you're so persistent. And I don't feel that way at all. Um, but the thing that keeps me going is honestly, the audience and the fact that I'm doing this for a video. I think if I was just doing these projects, purely, on my own, purely for the hell of it, I don't know that I would, I think I would give up a lot sooner. Um, but the rule that I came up with for myself, uh, actually during the second video that I made, which was the headphone jack story, I wanted to give up, I don't know, halfway or three-quarters of the way through. I got to this point where I was like, I've done all of the interesting parts. I've proved to myself that this is possible. It's just a matter of like fully assembling the thing now. And I didn't feel like I could just give up, unless I could. I didn't want to tell the audience that I had given up unless I had a really, kind of airtight reason why it wasn't possible. And
Right.
I didn't feel like I had that. And so I kept working towards, okay, well, let's at least find why it isn't possible, right? And to find why something isn't possible, you have to try a bunch of different things. And in the process of that, I just accidentally succeeded one day, you know? Um, and so, I could have come up with an excuse, but, much earlier, but I didn't. And yeah, that led to this amazing story of sort of struggling through it. And at least in my process, like I don't really edit much until after the project is totally done. So we pile up a whole bunch of footage and then we try and craft a story out of it afterwards. And it led to this really cool story of sort of struggle and determination and stubbornness that I certainly wasn't feeling in the moment, but I guess I was acting out. And that's honestly where I've ended up. Committed to doing this. I'm really, I've invested a lot of time to get to where I am, and it would be a real shame to just sort of drop the project because it's getting hard, and because I'm ready to move
Yeah.
on. I mean, that being said, I think it is really emotionally hard on me at times because I don't know how much longer it's going to take. And I think you sort of get into this head state where you're like, I'm really frustrated. I feel like a total failure, and I don't know how much longer how many more weeks I'm gonna have to sort of wallow in this before I can declare victory. And so that's been a real struggle, and it definitely does take a toll. But
I definitely noticed that in the ATM video. Fair play for you, kind of, for powering on with that one.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, thanks. That took a lot out of both me and Matt, the guy I've been collaborating on with.
So these projects have kind of got their highs, their lows. You must be absolutely drained after that kind of stuff. So when you're not doing these things, when you're not doing tours or anything, what other things do you do to just relax and unwind after all this?
Yeah. So I'm an avid hang gliding pilot, so I really enjoy that. It's something that I mostly can do only in the U.S. just because of the logistics of it. But I've been really enjoying that over the past few months. I really enjoy cycling. In general, I sort of like doing stuff outdoors. Scuba diver. When I'm in Shenzhen, I really enjoy playing ultimate frisbee. I'm not very good or not in incredible shape, but I really enjoy it. Good group of people. Yeah. I mean, to be honest, like, I work a ton, so I don't have a ton of free time a lot of the time. But I tend to work at least 6 days a week, if not 7. So, keeps me pretty well occupied.
Your work ethic's kind of put me to shame here, especially when what you do to relax seems more energetic than what I do. I think I did a 10K once, and that was I'm now kind of starting to see why kind of Scottish people have kind of this kind of thing of having heart disease at an early age.
Yeah.
Considering that you're doing all that to unwind.
Well, you gotta put that energy somewhere. You gotta put that stress somewhere.
Well, I think I'm going to have to kind of make some real serious life choices after this podcast episode. So you've done this incredible journey, where you're traveling, you're kind of discovering all these places, you're doing your projects and stuff. Is there anything, and I mean anything, about a 9 to 5 lifestyle that you miss?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I miss being able to leave work and leave all the responsibility of work at work, I think when I was just a software engineer, a software engineer at Google, for instance, like when I left the office, I didn't really have to think about it anymore. And I think life as an entrepreneur, and as a YouTube creator, I'm just always thinking about it, and it's always in the back of my brain. And I'm always like, I always feel like I should be working, and I think it's very hard to sort of shut that off. Yeah. And honestly, like, I also just miss that, like, I think, when you're working for somebody else, at the end of the day, there's a bunch of other things that other people are responsible for. Ultimately the success or failure of the company is not directly on your shoulders. Whereas I think with YouTube creation, which I think is just another form of entrepreneurship, I think at the end of the day, the buck stops with you, and the success or the failure of the company really depends on you. And I think that can be hard and can be unrelenting at times.
I mean, that is, I haven't really thought about it that way, as though, doing the YouTube channel. I don't think most people do. They kind of don't realize that when you're doing these YouTube channels, you are kind of essentially working for yourself. You are your own boss. You are kind of the one that manages all the scheduling and things like that. There's so many elements that happen off camera.
Yeah.
It's good. As you're kind of talking about that, I'm only about maybe 9 episodes into doing the podcast kind of stuff. And I'm realizing the kind of all the logistics that go on behind the scenes. So I can only imagine that's tenfold with video production and kind of doing what you're doing.
Yeah, I mean, it's scheduling, it's booking travel, it's lining up factories, it's finding, camera operators, it's scheduling editors and managing the editing process. And that's before you even get to sort of the business side of like, okay, how are we going to make money, right? YouTube pays some on ads, but not quite to the level that would allow me to do everything that I want to do. So we've got sponsors in the mix, and so then you're doing sales and relationship management there. Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot of wearing a lot of different hats that are not all super compatible with each other, and so you're switching modes a lot.
Don't worry, I definitely picked up an iFixit kit for you.
Excellent.
So kind of speaking of purchases, what's been the kind of craziest or most memorable purchase you've made in your travels?
Oh, I'll tell you what I almost bought and then what I actually bought. I almost bought a canoe, uh, in like way backwater Laos, way up in the mountains. And the plan was to, paddle this canoe through whitewater down to Luang Prabang, which probably, would have taken us better part of a week or 2 weeks. It was with a girl that I'd met while I was backpacking, and we aborted that trip because she got an infection in her knee, and so we had to evacuate her to Thailand to get surgery instead. But I was still really hungry for adventure, so I got her out to Thailand, and then I went and bought a bicycle for $120 in Vientiane, Laos. It was the largest bicycle, I'm convinced, for sale in all of Laos, and it was still too small for me. And
yeah,
it was like yeah, oh yeah, I mean, I was, yeah, way, way larger than your average Lao person. And I rode that bicycle. It was like a 10-speed, or no, it might have been a 15-speed mountain bike for 2.5 months. I rode down all the way down from Vientiane all the way to the border with Cambodia, and then down to Phnom Penh, and then out to Bangkok, like 1,500 kilometers. And it's the best traveling I've ever done. I had the craziest experiences. I slept with monks in a monastery one night. I slept with people in their houses. I saw the craziest traveling motorcycle circus I've ever seen. I rode on everything from paved roads to single track footpath. I had a map that was a little too optimistic about how quickly they were going to build a road. And what I thought was going to be a paved highway was a single track footpath for 2 days. And yeah, just saw all sorts of amazing things that, I mean, I think traveling by bicycle and even the stuff that I do with Strangeparts around factories, like you end up going to places that you wouldn't otherwise have an excuse to go. And for me, that's where the amazing magical stuff happens. It's not when you're in sort of the tourist destinations or the big cities where, where lots of people pass through. It's when you're way out in the sticks and middle of nowhere where, no foreigners normally have an excuse to go
where you get a genuine picture.
Exactly. You get a genuine picture, and you also get a genuine reaction from people. You get much more symmetry between how excited you are to see them and to meet people and to see what their lives are like. They also are similarly excited to meet you and learn about your life and share with you. So to me, that's one of the most exciting parts of travel.
The jealousy is probably emanating all like 10,000 miles away from you at the moment. Whereas it's really, I mean, your story is absolutely incredible. When you see the more we talk, the more I find out getting information. I go, this guy not done. How can I even do 10% of this?
Well, you have to start. You just have to start and get out there. My list of things that I want to do is still longer by far than the things I've already done.
You're going to have to hook me up with that list so I can have a look and go, right, I can maybe do that.
Totally.
So what's for you has been the most unexpected benefit from doing the Strangeparts thing and like you said, being your own boss?
Yeah, unexpected. I don't know. I mean, I think maybe, I don't know if it's unexpected or not, but I think, doing Strangeparts opens a lot of doors for me. I've just had a lot of opportunities to do things that I wouldn't have otherwise had a chance to do, and to meet people that I wouldn't have otherwise had a chance to meet. And so that's certainly one of the things that I value the most. It's to the point where just about any city I'm in the world, somebody recognizes me on the street from Strangeparts, and so that's pretty cool and pretty special. And I get a lot of people reaching out that say, I work at such and such a factory. Would you like to come by and check it out? Or, I live such and such a place. Would you like to come see? I've had offers for everything from, someone living in Sri Lanka, whose family is in the gemstone cutting business to come learn about, cutting gemstones to, people in foundries in Scotland making, cast iron things, and that's pretty awesome. I'm only able to take people up on a fraction of what comes in, but that's pretty special.
Well, if you do the Foundry and it's close to me, I'll hook you up with a pint.
Awesome. Yeah, I'd love that. I'd love that. In terms of, you also sort of asked, like, in terms of working for myself, which I think would be a very different answer. I think in terms of working for myself, I started working for myself long before I started Strangeparts. And I think if I hadn't been working for myself, it would have been hard for me to start Strangeparts. I spent 5 months of full-time work making my first video, and I spent 4 months making my second video. And I wasn't making money on Strangeparts that whole time. So, for those first 9 months, I mean, I guess I started to make some ad revenue, but it really wasn't very much at all. It wasn't enough to sustain what I was doing. And, if I'd not already worked for myself and had, had income and had just the freedom, the mental freedom to sort of say, okay, I'm going to spend a bunch of time on something that I don't know if it's going to pay off, but I'm pretty sure it's going to lead me to the next thing. I wouldn't have gone down this road. I had no idea when I started that it was going to turn into such a big thing. I thought it had, by the time I got most of the way through it, it seemed like a pretty interesting idea to build your own iPhone. And it seemed like that resonated with people and that it was going to get some level of traction, but I didn't realize that, millions and millions of people were going to watch it and that it would, directly turn into that I could make money from going on adventures and bringing people along with. So I think that space to go out and explore, and that space to go and say, I'm going to try something and I don't know where it's going to lead is part of what you get with the freedom of working for yourself.
Can I state once again how jealous I am? But so you've kind of just completed, or you've just kind of released your kind of ATM slot machine project.
Yeah.
Do you want to tell me all about that, or tell people about that so that they know what they're in for?
Sure.
If they kind of check
out. Sure. So I'll give you sort of the elevator pitch that I've been using. One of the things when I work on a story and I'm working on a story, my friends are always asking, what are you working on? And that's a chance for me to sort of refine the elevator pitch as we go along to sort of figure out what the concise version of it is so that we can describe it to people in the story. So I'll give you that. So the short version is that, I usually start by asking people, do you know the problem with slot machines? And the problem with slot machines is that you never win the jackpot. And so we set out to fix that. Also, there's a problem with ATM machines. And the problem with ATM machines is that they're super boring. And I really think that you should feel like a winner. So we went out and bought a slot machine and an ATM, like stock off the shelf, and set out to marry those together to build a slot machine that you win every time. But given that I'm not, a multimillionaire, I couldn't just be giving away free money to people. So the idea is that you put in your debit card, you type in your PIN number, you select how much you'd like to win, and then you pull the handle and the reel spin, and then you hit the jackpot, guaranteed every single time, all for the low price of the ATM fee. Yeah. And so we succeeded. We built a real ATM slot machine. It has all of the functioning parts from an ATM in it, and it's connected to the ATM network, and you put in your real debit card and you type in your real PIN number and you win real money, it dispenses real money.
You become that wee bit poorer.
Yes, exactly. Well, yeah.
It's a bit of double think you've done there. People think they're winning when in fact they're draining their money.
Right. Well, they're withdrawing their money. They're withdrawing their money.
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
True.
Yeah. So they do pay us a small ATM fee, which is pretty standard here in the US, to pay a few dollars for using an ATM that isn't your bank's ATM. And we do that mostly just because it's a requirement of the processing network that we're connected to. So.
Yeah. For our kind of ATMs over here, it's for the most part it's advertised free. What I have noticed though is that it's chargeable in bars and clubs. Imagine that.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. Yeah.
When you're drunk and when you need that one more drink,
right?
The £1 or £2.50 charge. Just
right.
proceed.
Got it. Yeah. One of the things that we learned is that bars and restaurants really like having ATMs because they can recycle their cash into them and then don't have to pay an armored car to come pick it up. And so they're winning on both ends. They don't have to pay as much to the armored car, and they're making money on the ATM fees.
Weird how these kind of things marry up.
Yeah.
So where do you get these? Where do you kind of come up with these kind of ideas? Like, I would never in my life think, let's put an ATM and a slot machine together. It just doesn't compute for me. Maybe I'm just kind of, I'm stuck in a box kind of creatively. But where do you kind of brainstorm these kind of wacky yet incredible projects from?
Yeah, it mostly comes from hanging out with other smart manufacturing geeks who and it kind of comes out of the conversation, So it'll be, this one in particular came out of walking around Tokyo with my friend Stuart and peeking our heads into one of the pachinko parlors. And pachinko, are you familiar with pachinko? It's sort of like a Japanese gambling game. It has very small metal balls, much smaller than like a pinball ball, more like a pea-sized ball. And it sort of fires them up to the top of the machine, and then they come draining down through a series of pins. And if it lands in various holes, then you win more balls. And it is, at the end of the day, they say that it's not gambling, but at the end of the day, it's totally gambling. And there's a convoluted scheme by which you can trade balls for a very specific souvenir, and then you can take that very specific souvenir around the corner to a hole in the wall and turn that souvenir cash. But it's incredible. Not technically gambling because of the way the souvenir and the hole in the wall work.
The steps involved.
Yeah, right. So those pachinko parlors also have slot machines. And so somewhere in the conversation of walking around and trying to figure out how pachinko worked and all of this, I don't know, that we came up with that idea. And I sort of latched onto it. Slot machines suck because you never win the jackpot. Like, how could we make that better? And it was like, well, what if we made a slot machine where you pay to win the jackpot? And then it was like, well, it's not very interesting unless you're winning a lot of money. And then it was like, okay, well, how can you pay and win a lot of money? ATM machines. I think that was sort of the path to it. It was something like that. But yeah, most of my ideas come just sort of while I'm out and about, and they often come from other people, and I just sort of accumulated a long list of ideas of interesting things. And sometimes I'll find an idea of an interesting place, and I won't quite know what to do there yet. Or sometimes I'll come up with an interesting idea of a thing to do, but I don't know where to do it yet. And so then a lot of those ideas sort of sit and wait until I find both pieces, a thing to do in a place, and then we've got a story, and kind of off to researching it and figuring out, okay, how do we make this actually happen?
Once again, I'm kind of realizing I really need to up my creative game as well. You're making me realize a lot of things, Scotty. Namely, I'm shuffling through life at the moment, it seems. You're such an overachiever, you. But anyway,
well, thanks. I certainly don't feel that way. I certainly feel like I'm shuffling through life as well. I just, try and push myself to make the occasional intentional choice.
When you started all this kind of journey, with the Strangeparts thing, what do you wish you'd known now that you could have told, your past self when you were starting out? Or would you change nothing? No regret?
It's a good question. Yeah, it's a good question. I think maybe I would have encouraged myself to build a team faster. And it's still my struggle today, is building a team. So, it's advice to my current self as much as it is my past self. There's just a lot of things to do. And I think the emotional burden of trying to do it all yourself is really hard. And, I think, as soon as you can build a team, you should. I'm trying to think what else. Yeah, I don't know. This might not be advice to my past self as much as just sort of retrospective. But I think one of the things that I still struggle with is that I spent so much time making my first couple videos, that it has been challenging to sort of get on a more regular content production schedule since. And it's, the nature of YouTube in particular is not one that's super friendly to very infrequent. So it worked really well first couple videos, and it's been an uphill battle to sort of try and produce content quickly enough. Yeah. So I don't think I would do it any other way. If I were to start again, I don't think I would do it any other way. But I think maybe I don't know. I guess I was cognizant of that start, and I still feel like it's a struggle.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Certainly the content, if it's done in terms of content quality, speaking as a big fan, I don't notice any dip in quality. I love every video that I've seen.
Oh, thank you. Thanks. Yeah.
I am fanboying out slightly for my audience. Sorry, I've been reining it in as close as I can, but it's probably been like laying it on your trowel at the
moment. I think here's one that I would say. I really hemmed and hawed whether to start Strangeparts, and I kind of had an inkling of what it was going to be. I ran across this idea of building my own iPhone. I actually did a couple of videos that are not uploaded to the Strangeparts channel that in retrospect are Strangeparts videos. And I think if I were to say, if I were to give some advice to my past self, it would be to like dive in with both feet sooner and spend less time sort of hemming and hawing about whether it was the right path to go down. Yeah. And I think, yeah, I mean, I think a lot of my hesitance was, is this really meaningful? Is what I'm doing meaningful? Am I creating value in the world? And I somehow had this notion that making videos was less valuable than, say, making a product. And now I definitely don't have that notion. But it took me a long time to get away from that notion of like, oh, this isn't going to be a real company. This isn't a real thing unless I'm making a product of some sort. Yeah. I had a very, very fateful conversation one New Year's with my friend, which was right sort of in the middle of me working on the first video. And I was hemming and hawing about Trump had just gotten elected, and I had started this project to work on like wearable body cameras for citizens. There were reports of people being accosted in San Francisco by sort of hate-filled people, and I sort of felt like I was driven to like try and fight that with technology as best I could. And so yeah, right, exactly. I mean, we're engineers, but I was trying to find an engineering solution to a social problem, right? And I'd stopped working on the iPhone video to work on that, and it was in that conversation with Patrick that I just realized I was more passionate about this idea of trying to build my own iPhone and about telling that story than I was about these body cameras. And that's what led to me going down that road. So
glad you did.
Yeah, me too. I mean, it was obviously the right thing.
Yeah. What's been your, do you watch your own videos or anything like that?
Oh, I watch my own videos. Yeah. A lot before we release them, and then usually never again after that. But in the editing process, I mean, it's definitely not the case. I just throw raw footage over the wall to the editor and upload whatever he sends back. Now I will watch a video, gosh, probably 20 or 30 times by the time we're done. So I can usually recite entire portions of it, and know pretty intimately how it all fits together, even if I'm not the one who's sort of the lead editor on it.
So what's been your favorite one to date then?
That's a good question. Gosh, I don't know. It's hard because they're all a part of me, right? And they're all sort of a part of me sharing my experience with the world. Yeah, I don't know that I have a specific favorite. I guess a favorite recently that I often, when people say, what's your favorite? I sort of think of the ones that I feel like should have gotten more views than they did, because they were near and dear to my heart, but then not as many people watched them. One that I really liked how it came out, and I put a lot of my heart and soul into it, was the PCB's Paintings and Possibilities, which was a look at how Chinese industries are structured, looking across two very different industries. So looking at the electronics industry in Shenzhen, and then looking at the oil painting industry in Shenzhen, and specifically the impressionist replica oil painting industry in Shenzhen.
Yes, I do remember that one. And some of the recreations those guys did were
phenomenal. Phenomenal. Yeah. And now a number of them are getting international recognition for their painting skill, and are starting to break out and do their own original work. And yeah, it's a fascinating part of Shenzhen. And so I really enjoyed sort of comparing those two industries and showing, how is the structure the same despite the output product being very, very different.
Mm-hmm. I'm surprised that didn't do as well as the other ones, because that one was, it was a wee kind of not complete break from what you were doing, but it was it fitted well with the kind of concept. So
Yeah.
I'm actually quite surprised at that.
I think people got scared off by the paintings part of that and thought, oh, I'm not interested in painting, or I'm not a painter myself. And therefore, yeah, right. Exactly. I get a ton of that. So.
Is that something that you're kind of, you've embraced, or is it something you're kind of saying, well, I'm not just the iPhone guy, I've got X, Y, and Z going on?
I mean, yeah. For me, Strangeparts has always been about much more than just iPhones. But because that first video did so well, a lot of people decided, oh, this must be an entire channel about iPhones. So it's been kind of a balance of like, yeah, totally. How do I feed that portion of the audience who is really interested in iPhone stuff, interesting things to do there, and I have lots of ideas there. How do I feed that while still sort of doing the other things that I'm interested in, broadening it up? I also think it can be very dangerous to get very narrowly typecast into something, and
yeah, definitely,
and can really affect the longevity of a brand and a channel. So I'm very careful not to be just iPhones and not to be just China. And it's kind of an ongoing balance to strike.
Speaking of other places other than kind of China, I have to mention, I really, really dig the video on the hackerspace in San Francisco.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah. Wish we had something like that in Glasgow, because I'd probably kind of, purely out of curiosity, would love to kind of go and see what people are doing and working on.
You might. There are hackerspaces all over the world. If you go to hackerspaces.org, there's a pretty comprehensive list of all of the hackerspaces in the world. And most major cities have at least one, if not several. So
I'm gonna have to look that up. So can you tell us, Scotty, a fact about yourself that isn't well known?
Oh gosh.
I know you're a fairly open book, so this might be too difficult.
I've got a good one. I don't have a high school degree. I don't have a high school diploma.
What?
Yeah. So I didn't graduate high school, and I went to college a semester early. So I hated high school that much that within a couple weeks of hearing that there was a college that accepted students before they finished high school, I was on a plane, ready to start classes in January. So I don't have a high school diploma or a GED, an equivalent diploma. But it's never mattered. I've always, once you have a college degree, nobody asks for your high school.
Nobody really cares after that,
Yeah, exactly. I just looked up, and there is a hackerspace in Glasgow called Electron Club, and it has, according to this, approximately 270 members. So you'll have to go check it out.
Yes, thank you. I'll be in touch to let you know how I find it.
Yeah, definitely.
Maybe name dropping you might kind of open some doors for me. Who knows? So, Scotty, this has been great. Just one final question for you, and then I've taken up enough of your time. What would your kind of advice be for someone who's thinking of taking the leap, leaving the 9-to-5 kind of lifestyle, and much like yourself, kind of pursuing their passion? What would you say? And it doesn't even need to be from a kind of traveling or tech perspective, just your own kind of how you feel about it.
I would just say that jobs are overrated. Yeah, I think a lot of people are afraid to make the leap. And, I acknowledge that I come from a point of a fair bit of privilege. Being a programmer, it was always fairly easy for me to go back and get another job. But I think that people tend to overestimate, particularly people who are sort of in the middle of their career, have an established profession. I think they tend to overestimate the risks and underestimate how easily they'll be able to reestablish themselves in their career if going off and leaving the 9-to-5 doesn't work out. And that prevents a lot of people from ever trying. And I think it's really important to sit down and think through, okay, like if this does fail, what actually will I have to do to, to get another job and to get back on my feet? And I think people have strong feelings in both directions, but part of what got me out of the 9 to 5 and on my own path of entrepreneurship was reading Tim Ferriss's 4-Hour Workweek, which I think is problematic in many ways. It is often overly simplifies things, but he has an interesting idea of this exercise called a fear setting exercise, which is to sit down and think, what is holding me back from making this decision that I want to make, and let's think of the worst possible scenario there, and then if that actually happened, what would I do if I was actually in that position? And I think that is a really useful exercise to sort of encourage you to really think through the practicalities of what you're worried about, which usually makes you realize that they aren't as bad as you thought.
Great. Scotty, it's been an absolute pleasure.
Likewise, Kevin.
If anybody is interested in finding out more about Scotty and what he does, he's on YouTube, and it's very straightforward. The YouTube channel name is Strangeparts, and I urge you guys to check out every video, because the iPhone videos are great. The ATM slot machine is a journey, would be what you would describe it as, Scotty.
I think that's accurate. Yeah.
So fully encourages to kind of check that out. Scotty, is there any other way that people can kind of see what you're up to and see what you're doing? You've got a website, yeah?
Yeah, I've got a website, strangeparts.com. Twitter is a great way to see what I'm up to, strangeparts.com, C-O-M. And then, Instagram and Facebook as well. Strangeparts on both of those.
Well, Scotty, once again, thank you very much for your time. It's been an absolute privilege from this fanboy in Glasgow.
Thank you for having me. Yeah, this has been a pleasure.
A very big thank you to Scotty Allen for being on the show, and if you would like to be a guest on the podcast, please contact us either via our website, which is www.anythingbut9to5.com, 9 to 5 as in the numbers, or at our email address, which is anythingbut9to5@gmail.com, or if you want to contact us through social media, the handle is the exact same for both Facebook and Twitter. It's at anythingbut9to5. Please like, comment and subscribe, as it really helps us. Thanks.